A House is Not a Home is the 25th and penultimate episode of the 5th season of Cheers. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And it's an interesting episode, partly because it's just a brilliant episode, but also because I know what happens next. I know how the season ends, so it's bittersweet, but in general, it is a fantastic episode. And of course, I won't say what happens next, partly because I don't want to think about it, but also because I won't give any spoilers for what happens after this episode. But there will be spoilers, of course, from now for A House is Not a Home. And it starts off with Carla complaining to Woody about the state of her life. And Woody says that when he's feeling unhappy, he closes his eyes and thinks a happy thought. And he does this and he has a little smile to himself. And Carla asks him what his thought was. And he replies, "I'm glad I'm not you." That's so brutal. For Woody, that's very brutal, but a pretty fun way to start things off. After the intro, we then have Woody working briefly on the Cheers newsletter with Norm and Frasier. Diane then comes in very happy because she has found a house. And even though she has agreed with Sam to live in Sam's apartment for a year after they're married, she wants this house. And Cliff actually suggests his house. Diane's face is amazing. She turns back to look at Sam, and it's probably going to be the thumbnail for this video. I really wanted an image of Sam and Diane, but I cannot deny that picture. I absolutely love Diane's face there. And it turns out that Diane has put a refundable deposit down on the house, and Sam basically pushes her into his office to talk things out. Cut immediately to the next scene. They are walking into this house. It does look beautiful. What we see of it absolutely looks gorgeous. And Sam is carrying a picture. We can't see what it is initially. We can only see the back of it. And Sam says, "Every time I come here, I like this place more and more." That's a really good way to help us establish a rough passage of time, because I think initially the first thought is this is Sam seeing the house for the first time. That's not the case. They've clearly been back several times and they've now actually bought the house. We do then get to see the picture as Sam goes to hang it up on the wall. It's a picture of dogs playing blackjack. It's not too bad. Diane's not a fan, but Sam is clearly very happy. And we then see two people coming out of a room in the house, and it turns out that this is Lillian and Bert Miller, played by Billie Bird and Douglas Seale, who were actually the house's former owners for 40 years, and they begin to share some memories about the house. And clearly it was a home that they loved, and their family grew up in this house. And once they leave, Sam is on the floor where he and Diane were actually about to start polishing before he saw Lillian and Bert, and he kind of spins around, kind of half on his butt, half on his hip, arms open for an embrace from Diane, and all she responds is, "I cannot live a single day in this house." We then cut to them returning back to the house at some point, and they're talking about this and how Diane doesn't want to live in this house because the memories belong to the Millers. And I don't necessarily understand Diane's logic, because if they decided to not live in that house, it's not like the Millers would then return to the house. But nevertheless, she's not happy about this, and she declares, "I'm not in the mood for fun and games." And at that perfect moment, the gang at Cheers come in with balloons and food and everything to celebrate the housewarming. It's a really lovely moment. Diane tells them to leave, and Norm's response is amazing. Norm says to Sam, "A couple of years ago, this might have taken me by surprise, but now I just kind of roll with it," which I absolutely love. And for a moment, it seems like Diane is slowly coming around to the idea of living in this house, and Sam wants to polish the floors again. And Diane says to him with a brilliant facial expression, "Do you think I could ever make love in this house?" It's definitely quite a roller coaster for everybody involved. We then cut back to Cheers. We get a Norm. Norm has big news. Apparently he saw the actor Robert Urich, and then we find out that Sam and Diane are actually trying to sell the house, and they have some buyers, and they seem like the perfect buyers, by which I mean they can afford the house, and Diane turns them down because she doesn't think they're good enough to live in the Miller's house. Obviously, she doesn't tell them that quite bluntly. And Sam actually has a bit of an outburst, and it's his time to show that actually this isn't acceptable. And he says to Diane, and I quote, "When are we going to do something that I want to do?" And I do love Diane's response, because she reminds him that they're actually going to Disney World on their honeymoon, which I rather enjoy, because that was mentioned, I think, 2 episodes ago. So I like that we have a nice bit of continuity about their honeymoon there. And Frasier suggests that they give the couple, the Millers, one last Christmas at the house. And they decide to have Christmas early. And we cut back to the house. The rest of the episode is in the house, and it's beautifully decorated for Christmas. Sam is dressed up as Santa, which is an absolute delight. And the whole family is there, the Millers and their grandchildren and children, and they start to sing "Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow," which is probably something Sam was deeply wishing for, because he was baking hot in that Santa suit. And everything seemed to go really well. But then the Millers started to talk about how the children would have to just rely on their memories of Christmases and Easter. And one of the children said they don't remember having an Easter there. So Diane suggests that next week they'll have a big Easter hunt. And it is worth pointing out that this takes place in May, and Easter would have been just before this, so it's a little bit awkward that one of the children doesn't remember having Easter in that house. One could argue that maybe they'd already started to plan the move by that point, but I do feel like that's maybe just a little bit of an oversight, that Easter was only really a couple of months before at the very most. I just googled it. Easter in 1987 was on the 19th of April. So they would have had Easter maybe 4 weeks before that. Maybe they weren't in the house at that point. I'm absolutely overthinking this. I absolutely am. But it's just something that stood out to me as a little bit awkward, that the child couldn't remember Easter, when they probably still had the house at that point. At the very least, their belongings were still in that house, because we saw them not that long ago taking the last of their belongings out of the house. I'm overthinking it. I'm going to move on. Sam protests. Enough is enough. They can't just live their lives for the sake of the Millers family. And the grandmother, Lillian, points out that although Sam was rather rude about it, he does have a point. And the family all gather up together and go off to the new condo that they've bought. And it seems like Diane is about to have a bit of an outburst, and actually she said, "Suddenly the house is ours." And she was happy that Sam had claimed it for her, in her words. And they decide to go and polish the floor in the dining room. And Sam, when we can't see them, they go through to the other room, and Sam just gives the most beautiful laugh. It's such a gorgeous sound. And then a second later, Diane scurries out with the dog painting and then scurries back in. And it's a beautiful way to end a rather lovely episode. And honestly, I'm not looking forward to the next episode. That's not to say it's not a good episode, but I've been dreading, basically since starting season 5, I've been dreading the end of season 5, but I'll say no more about that for the moment. I will just bask in the beauty that is the relationship of Sam and Diane and the episode A House Is Not a Home, because there are some great moments in this episode. The house is absolutely gorgeous, and what a beautiful final moment, beautiful final scene there. Sam's laugh is fabulous, and ultimately, I can't fault the episode.